The underground chamber in Peru's Nazca region had been discovered accidentally during a routine archaeological survey in March 1981. What was supposed to be a simple documentation of Inca road systems had become validation of his dead mentor's theories that Nathan had spent 5 years trying to prove. And now, 18 hours after breaking through the sealed entrance, Dr. Reeves and his team of 6 other archaeologists were staring at evidence that would either vindicate Professor Martinez's memory or destroy their careers if they reported it accurately. Before we uncover what these ancient walls revealed about humanity's hidden past, a quick whisper. This channel explores mysteries history tried to bury, lost expeditions, forbidden discoveries, evidence that vanished. If you're drawn to stories mainstream archaeology won't tell, consider subscribing. We dig deep into the ruins of forgotten truth. The chamber stretched 40 meters in length, carved directly into solid rock beneath what appeared to be a natural hill. But there was nothing natural about the precision of its construction. The walls were perfectly smooth, cut with mathematical precision that would challenge modern stone-cutting equipment. Each corner formed exact 90-degree angles, and the ceiling height remained constant throughout the entire length, with variations measured in millimeters rather than centimeters. Dr. Isabella Vargas, the team's expert in pre-Columbian scripts, ran her fingers along the carved symbols with growing confusion. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, stepping back from the wall. "These aren't Quechua, aren't Aymara, aren't any indigenous language I've studied in 20 years. She paused, tilting her head. "But something about them feels familiar, like they're combining elements from multiple ancient writing systems in ways that shouldn't be possible." The air inside the chamber felt different from normal underground spaces. Instead of the musty, stagnant atmosphere typical of sealed caves, the air moved with subtle currents that suggested active ventilation systems. Dr. Marcus Kent noticed it first. "Anyone else feel that?" he asked, holding up his hand. "There's air movement down here. This place has been sealed for thousands of years. Where's the circulation coming from?" Dr. Kent documented each section of wall with methodical precision, but his equipment kept malfunctioning in ways that made no sense. "What the hell?" he cursed, staring at his camera display. "The screen shows clear images, but when I review them," he showed the team his camera's memory. The hieroglyphs appeared distorted, blurred, as if something was interfering with the electronic recording process. "Same problem here." Dr. Yolanda Gutierrez called from across the chamber. She was running preliminary carbon dating on stone samples. "My equipment's giving readings that violate basic principles of radioactive decay. Either every piece of gear is malfunctioning simultaneously, or these materials don't follow normal temporal patterns." Dr. Helena Mora looked up from her examination of symbol patterns, excitement building in her voice. "Nathan, you need to see this. These aren't just decorative, they're mathematical formulas, geometric relationships that demonstrate advanced understanding of physics and engineering." She traced complex equations with her finger. "The precision here requires knowledge that ancient civilizations shouldn't have possessed." But it was Nathan who first understood what the hieroglyphs were actually describing. "My God," he whispered, Professor Martinez's voice echoing in his memory. "These aren't historical records. They're technical diagrams, blueprints." His mentor had always insisted that ancient texts contained hidden engineering knowledge. These are instruction manuals for machines that modern engineering is only beginning to understand. Dr. Felix Cabrera examined trace metals embedded in the chamber walls, his voice growing increasingly puzzled. "These alloy compositions don't match any known ancient metalworking techniques," he announced to the team. "The materials show evidence of precision manufacturing that required temperature control and atmospheric conditions beyond anything pre-Columbian civilizations could have achieved." "Wait," Dr. Vargas called out suddenly, her voice echoing in the chamber. "Nathan, look at this. These aren't words at all. They're equations, mathematical progressions disguised as ancient writing." She traced the symbols with her finger, excitement building in her voice. "If I apply mathematical interpretation instead of linguistic rules," she paused, her face pale. "The electromagnetic generation system described here could power an entire city using materials ancient civilizations could have implemented." Dr. Kent discovered something that made his hands shake. "The camera malfunctions aren't random," he said, his voice tight with fear. They happen specifically when I try to photograph the most advanced sections. It's like the symbols themselves are interfering with electronic recording, preventing documentation of the most sensitive information. The southern wall contained diagrams that made Dr. Reeves question whether they were dealing with human technology at all. The hieroglyphs described flight systems that operated according to principles of atmospheric manipulation rather than mechanical propulsion. The mathematical formulas showed how to create controlled flight by manipulating air density and gravitational fields using energy generation techniques described elsewhere in the chamber. These weren't theoretical dreams of flight like those found in ancient myths. They were detailed engineering specifications for aircraft that could operate without mechanical engines, without fossil fuel consumption, and without the atmospheric pollution associated with modern aviation. The designs showed how to achieve controlled flight using electromagnetic field manipulation and atmospheric density modification techniques that 20th century aerospace engineering couldn't explain or duplicate. Dr. Mora's astronomical analysis revealed that the hieroglyphic patterns contained star charts showing planetary positions with accuracy that required telescopic observation, yet they were carved into stone over 3,000 years before the telescope was invented. More disturbing, the charts showed celestial bodies and stellar positions that weren't visible from Earth's surface, suggesting the chart creators had access to observation points beyond the planet's atmosphere. The astronomical data embedded in the hieroglyphic patterns included precise calculations of planetary orbits, stellar distances, and celestial mechanics that human astronomy had only recently achieved through space-based observation and advanced mathematical modeling. The charts showed knowledge of the solar system's structure that shouldn't have been available to ancient civilizations limited to naked-eye observation from Earth's surface. As afternoon turned to evening on their first day in the chamber, Dr. Reeves found himself facing discoveries that challenged not just archaeological theory, but fundamental assumptions about human technological development and the history of civilization itself. The hieroglyphic inscriptions weren't anomalies or mysteries waiting to be explained through conventional interpretation. They were evidence of capabilities that transcended known human achievement during any historical period. The chamber's central section contained what appeared to be a master control panel carved directly into the stone floor. The hieroglyphic symbols surrounding this area described operational procedures for systems that connected all the individual technologies into a unified network. It was as if the entire chamber served as a control center for technological infrastructure that spanned regions far beyond this single underground location. But what made Dr. Reeves realize they had discovered something that would require careful consideration before reporting was the condition of the chamber itself. Despite being sealed for what appeared to be thousands of years, the chamber showed no signs of deterioration, water damage, or structural weakening. The stone surfaces remained perfectly preserved, the hieroglyphic inscriptions showed no erosion or fading, and the overall construction appeared as fresh as if it had been completed recently. The preservation was too perfect for natural conditions. Underground chambers, even when sealed, typically showed evidence of geological stress, mineral deposits from groundwater, and gradual deterioration over centuries. This chamber showed none of these normal aging patterns, suggesting either that it hadn't been sealed as long as the dating indicated, or that it had been maintained by preservation techniques beyond known archaeological experience. Dr. Gutierrez's expanded carbon dating analysis produced increasingly contradictory results as she processed samples from different sections of the chamber. Some materials consistently dated to 1500 BCE, but others showed chronological signatures that placed their creation at various points throughout history, including some readings that didn't make chronological sense according to standard radioactive decay patterns. The most disturbing discovery came when Dr. Gutierrez found that certain metal components embedded in the chamber walls showed isotopic signatures indicating recent manufacture. Tool marks in some stone sections appeared fresh, and several hieroglyphic inscriptions showed evidence of being carved using precision equipment rather than ancient hand tools. As evening approached and the team prepared to leave the chamber for the night, Dr. Reeves realized that their archaeological expedition had evolved into something far more complex than standard historical research. The evidence they had documented challenged fundamental assumptions about ancient civilizations, human technological development, and the historical timeline of advanced engineering capabilities. The hieroglyphic inscriptions weren't just ancient mysteries waiting to be decoded. They were functional documentation for technologies that could revolutionize modern civilization. But they also raised questions about who had created these systems, why such advanced knowledge had been apparently lost, and whether the chamber represented historical achievement or something far more contemporary disguised as ancient construction. But what Dr. Reeves didn't yet understand was that their discovery had already attracted attention from parties who had been monitoring this region for decades, and that their routine archaeological expedition was about to become something far more complicated than academic research. The phone call came at 4:37 a.m. on their second day at the site. Nathan jolted awake in his tent as the satellite phone's insistent ringing cut through the desert silence. Dr. Reeves. The voice was crisp, professional, cold. This is Dr. Patricia Sterling, Department of Archaeological Security. We need to talk. Nathan sat up, instantly alert. I've never heard of. Your discovery yesterday has attracted attention from parties who need to discuss proper protocols, matters of national interest. The phrase hit Nathan like ice water. National interest. Ancient Peruvian hieroglyphs. How did you? We know about the power systems, Dr. Reeves. We know about the equipment malfunctions. We know exactly what you found down there. Sterling's voice carried an authority that made Nathan realize this wasn't a request. It was a notification. 6 hours later, Nathan watched vehicles with no official identification surround their site. Men in civilian clothes moved with military precision, establishing a security perimeter that transformed their archaeological camp into something resembling a federal operation. Dr. Reeves. The man approaching wore khakis and a polo shirt, but his bearing screamed government agent. Agent William Drake, Interagency Archaeological Oversight. He gestured toward the chamber entrance. Your discovery isn't new to us. We've been monitoring sites like this since 1943. Nathan felt his world tilting. Monitoring sites? What sites? World War II construction projects. We found the first one in Nevada. Drake paused, watching Nathan's reaction. Changed everything. If you've known about these places for 40 years, why hasn't the archaeological community? Because certain discoveries require security clearance to study. Drake's tone was matter of fact. Your translations, the power systems, those fall under classified defense research. Dr. Vargas emerged from the chamber, only to find her path blocked by 2 men in suits. I need to continue my translation work. Under supervision now, Drake interrupted. Some sections of those inscriptions contain information that requires background checks before review. The speed of the government response convinced Nathan they weren't dealing with routine bureaucracy. These people had been waiting, prepared, equipped specifically for this type of discovery. My photographs are being confiscated, Dr. Kent called out, anger building in his voice. They're using some kind of electronic scanner to remove specific images from my camera's memory. Drake nodded. The power diagrams you documented are relevant to ongoing defense programs. The decorative sections, those you can keep. Nathan realized the surgical precision of the operation. They knew exactly which sections contained sensitive information, exactly which photographs posed security concerns. This suggested extensive prior knowledge of what the chamber contained. Dr. Mora's star charts are classified now too, one of Drake's specialists reported. Observations that shouldn't have been possible without modern telescopes. Wait, Nathan said, pieces clicking together. You're saying this chamber has been accessed before? Drake's smile was grim. Multiple times since the 1950s. Each research team subject to the same protocols you're experiencing now. The perfect preservation wasn't natural, Nathan realized. You've been maintaining it. Controlled maintenance between research periods. Keeps the chamber available for ongoing study while preventing unauthorized access. Drake gestured toward the entrance. Care to see what your routine archaeological expedition actually discovered, Dr. Reeves? Nathan followed Drake deeper into passages that hadn't appeared on their surveys. The chamber they'd been studying was just the entrance to something much larger. "My God," Nathan breathed, staring at corridors that stretched into darkness. "How far does this go?"
Kilometers, maybe more. We haven't mapped it all yet.
Drake's flashlight beam revealed smooth walls that seemed to pulse with their own light. The construction techniques are impossible. No tool marks, no joints, no mortar. It's like the entire complex was carved from a single piece of rock. They walked for what felt like hours through passages that maintained perfect temperature and air circulation, despite being sealed underground for millennia. The walls grew warmer as they descended, and Nathan noticed his breathing became easier rather than more difficult. "The air quality improves the deeper we go," Drake observed. "Some kind of purification system that's still running after thousands of years." "Running on what power?" "That's what we've been trying to figure out for 70 years. They entered a vast chamber where equipment hummed with quiet energy. Banks of devices lined the walls, their purposes unclear but their operation undeniable. Screens displayed information in languages Nathan couldn't identify, and control panels responded to touch despite having no visible power sources. "Modern equipment," Nathan whispered, "but it operates on principles we don't understand. Running continuously for decades without maintenance or external fuel." Drake approached one of the devices. "Watch this." He placed his hand on a smooth panel, and immediately the chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts, mathematical equations, and three-dimensional models of structures Nathan couldn't comprehend. "It responds to human contact," Drake explained. "But the information it provides is beyond our current scientific understanding." Dr. Sterling appeared from the deeper sections of the facility. "Dr. Reeves, welcome to a research program that's been studying sites like this since military intelligence discovered that certain archaeological locations contain technologies beyond known human capabilities." "The inscriptions aren't historical records," she continued, leading Nathan through chambers where ancient stone integrated seamlessly with incomprehensible technology. "They're instruction manuals for equipment that's currently active throughout this facility." "Instruction manuals for what?" "Environmental control systems that regulate weather patterns across entire continents. Transportation networks that don't require conventional vehicles. Communication systems that operate faster than radio waves." Nathan's mind reeled. "That's impossible." "Is it? Your camera malfunctions when photographing certain sections. Your carbon dating produces impossible results. Your colleagues' astronomical charts show observations that shouldn't exist." Sterling stopped walking and turned to face him. "Dr. Reeves, what if everything we think we know about human technological development is wrong?" They entered a room filled with what appeared to be memory storage devices, crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light, each one containing vast amounts of information in formats human computers couldn't process. "These contain historical records going back millions of years," Sterling said. "Documentation of civilizations that rose and fell long before humans existed. And something else, evidence that Earth has been used as a research laboratory for studying consciousness development across multiple species." "Multiple species? Humans aren't Earth's first intelligent civilization, Dr. Reeves. We're not even the second or third. We're the latest in a series of experimental populations introduced to study different approaches to consciousness and social organization." Nathan felt the chamber walls closing in around him. Experimental populations. The original inhabitants of Earth achieved capabilities that allowed them to exist beyond physical limitations, but they continued to use the planet as a research facility for studying consciousness development in less advanced species. "You're saying humans are test subjects?" "I'm saying humans are approaching the end of their experimental period. The intelligence that manages Earth's research programs is preparing to conclude the current phase of human development." Sterling led him to a control center where displays showed real-time data from around the world, seismic activity, weather patterns, population movements, technological development, all being monitored and occasionally adjusted by systems operating beyond human knowledge. "This facility is one of hundreds around the world. They form a network that maintains environmental conditions suitable for the current experimental phase, but that phase is ending. What happens when it ends? That depends on the evaluation results. Humans who demonstrate appropriate understanding and development will be offered integration into the post-physical research community. Those who don't, Sterling's pause was more terrifying than any words she could have spoken. Integration means what exactly? Transcending individual human limitations, becoming part of a collective consciousness that operates according to principles beyond current human understanding. Nathan stared at the displays showing global monitoring data. And if we refuse, the experimental phase concludes. New populations are introduced for the next phase of research. How long do we have? The evaluation period concludes within 2 years. The choice you make here, Dr. Reeves, will influence not just your own future, but potentially the fate of your entire species. Nathan realized that his archaeological expedition had become something far more significant than academic research. He was being offered a choice that would affect every human being on Earth, whether they understood what was being decided or not. What do you need from me? Join the program, learn to operate these systems, help us prepare humanity for the evaluation that will determine whether your species continues to exist. And if I refuse, you'll be returned to the surface with no memory of this conversation. Your team will receive a cover story about gas leaks forcing evacuation of the site. Your archaeological career will continue as if none of this ever happened. Nathan looked around the chamber at technology that defied explanation, at displays showing global systems that had been maintaining human civilization without human knowledge, at evidence that everything he thought he knew about human history was incomplete. But the choice can't be unmade once I accept. There's no going back to ignorance, Dr. Reeves. Once you understand humanity's true situation, you become responsible for helping to navigate it. Nathan thought about Professor Martinez, about the theories that had destroyed his mentor's career and driven him to suicide, about the possibility that those theories had been not just correct, but understated. I accept, he said, knowing that his words would change everything for himself, and potentially for every human being alive. Then welcome to humanity's graduation examination, Sterling replied. Let's hope your species passes. But what Agent Drake revealed next would prove that even these shocking realizations were only the beginning of understanding what lay beneath the Peruvian desert, and how it connected to a global network of facilities that studied technologies whose origins challenged everything humanity thought it knew about its own history and capabilities. Agent Drake led Dr. Reeves deeper into the underground complex, through passages that hadn't appeared on any of their preliminary surveys. The chamber they had been studying was only the entrance to a facility that extended for kilometers beneath the surface, connecting to installations that served purposes far beyond archaeological research. The deeper sections contained equipment that was unmistakably modern, yet operated according to principles that mainstream engineering couldn't explain. Humming energy generation systems produced power levels that conventional science declared impossible, yet they had been running continuously for decades without maintenance or external fuel sources. The electromagnetic principles described in the hieroglyphs weren't theoretical. They were functional reality powering systems that defied known physics. Dr. Patricia Sterling met them in the deeper sections, and her credentials finally made sense. She wasn't affiliated with any normal government agency. She was the director of a research program that had been studying sites like this one since military intelligence first discovered that certain archaeological locations contained technologies that didn't match known human capabilities during World War II construction projects. The underground facilities stretched far beyond what any ancient civilization could have constructed using primitive tools. Tunnels carved through solid rock with laser precision connected chambers that housed equipment ranging from recognizably ancient to incomprehensibly advanced. The entire complex operated as an integrated system that combined archaeological preservation with active technological research. Dr. Sterling explained that the network of underground facilities had been discovered accidentally during military construction projects in the 1940s. Each site contained technologies that appeared ancient but functioned according to principles that 20th century science couldn't duplicate or explain. The facilities were clearly constructed by intelligences with capabilities far beyond human technological achievement at any point in recorded history. But the most disturbing discovery was that these facilities weren't abandoned ancient ruins. They were actively maintained and operated by systems that continued to function despite the absence of any visible maintenance personnel. The research programs that Agent Drake and Dr. Sterling represented were attempts to understand how these installations worked and who had created them. The hieroglyphic inscriptions that had puzzled Dr. Reeves' team weren't ancient historical records. They were operational manuals for equipment that was currently active throughout the facility. The symbols provided maintenance instructions, safety protocols, and operational procedures for personnel who needed to work with systems they couldn't fully understand, but could learn to operate through careful adherence to the documented procedures. Dr. Reeves found himself walking through chambers where ancient stone construction seamlessly integrated with technology that appeared decades ahead of anything publicly available. Control panels carved from solid rock operated equipment that displayed information using principles beyond current electronic engineering. Environmental systems maintained perfect atmospheric conditions throughout the complex using methods that consumed no detectable energy sources. The facility's lighting system operated without visible power sources, providing illumination that automatically adjusted to optimize visibility for human workers while consuming no electricity from conventional generators. Air circulation systems maintained perfect atmospheric conditions throughout kilometers of underground passages without producing any mechanical noise or requiring external power input. Dr. Sterling's research team had spent decades attempting to understand the basic operational principles that allowed these systems to function. The technology operated according to physical laws that human science was only beginning to discover, using energy sources and materials that weren't available through conventional industrial processes. But what made the facility truly impossible to explain was its apparent age combined with its perfect operational condition. Carbon dating confirmed that the basic construction was genuinely ancient, yet every system functioned as if it had been installed yesterday. The technology showed no signs of wear, degradation, or obsolescence despite operating continuously for thousands of years. The electromagnetic generation systems that Dr. Reeves had studied in the hieroglyphs were fully operational throughout the facility, providing power for research equipment, environmental controls, and communication systems that connected this installation to similar facilities around the world. The technology functioned perfectly, but couldn't be duplicated using current human industrial capabilities. Dr. Vargas was brought deeper into the complex to continue her translation work, and what she discovered challenged her understanding of both ancient languages and modern communication systems. The hieroglyphic inscriptions weren't static historical records. They were dynamic documentation that updated automatically as facility systems were modified or enhanced. The symbols changed in real time to reflect current operational conditions, maintenance requirements, and system modifications. The hieroglyphic writing system wasn't just ancient communication. It was a living interface between human operators and technological systems that required constant interaction and adjustment. Dr. Sterling explained that the research program's primary goal was learning to communicate effectively with the facility's operational systems. The hieroglyphic interface allowed human operators to access and control technologies they couldn't understand, but mastering the symbolic communication system required years of training and practice. The hydraulic systems described in the chamber's inscriptions were fully functional throughout the facility, providing water management and environmental control for the entire underground complex. The systems operated according to principles that combined gravitational manipulation with molecular-level water processing techniques that produced results beyond current environmental engineering capabilities. But the water management systems didn't just provide utilities for the facility. They influenced groundwater and atmospheric conditions throughout the entire region. The installation operated as an environmental control center that regulated weather patterns, geological stability, and ecological balance across thousands of square kilometers of surface territory. Dr. Mora's astronomical research took on new significance when Dr. Sterling revealed that the star charts weren't just navigation references, They were coordination protocols for activities that required precise timing relative to celestial mechanics. The facility's operations were synchronized with astronomical events that occurred on planetary, stellar, and galactic timescales. The underground complex operated according to schedules that spanned decades, centuries, and millennia. Some systems activated only during specific astronomical alignments, while others required coordination with similar facilities around the world to achieve effects that influenced global atmospheric and geological conditions. Dr. Sterling's research had determined that the facility network operated as a planetary management system that maintained environmental conditions suitable for human civilization. Climate stability, geological balance, and atmospheric composition were actively regulated by the underground installations through methods that remained largely beyond human understanding. The flight technology described in the chamber's hieroglyphs was operational throughout the facility, enabling transportation and communication that wasn't limited by surface geographical constraints. The atmospheric manipulation systems allowed movement between facilities regardless of distance or terrain obstacles. But Dr. Reeves' most shocking discovery came when Dr. Sterling revealed that human technological development had been deliberately guided by knowledge obtained from studying these facilities. Major breakthroughs in electromagnetic theory, materials science, aerospace engineering, and computer technology had been influenced by reverse engineering principles discovered in the underground installations. The facilities weren't just ancient archaeological sites. They were ongoing sources of technological advancement that had been secretly influencing human scientific progress for decades. Research programs studied the installations to extract knowledge that could be gradually introduced into mainstream science without revealing the true sources of the discoveries. Dr. Sterling explained that the carefully managed technology transfer was necessary because the full capabilities of the facility systems were too advanced for human civilization to implement safely. The installations contained knowledge that could revolutionize human society, but also technologies that could cause catastrophic damage if misused or implemented without proper preparation. The research programs served as filters that identified technologies suitable for gradual introduction to human science, while protecting access to capabilities that required more advanced social and ethical development before they could be safely utilized. Dr. Cabrera's metallurgical expertise was essential for understanding materials that weren't produced through terrestrial industrial processes. The facility contained alloys and composite materials that required manufacturing techniques beyond current human capabilities, using elements that weren't available in Earth's crust in the concentrations necessary for the observed material properties. The materials analysis suggested that the facility's builders had access to industrial infrastructure that operated beyond planetary limitations, using resources and manufacturing processes that spanned multiple worlds or required capabilities that transcended normal planetary industrial development. But the most disturbing implication was that the facility's builders weren't ancient humans. They were intelligences with capabilities that exceeded human technological achievement by margins that suggested completely different approaches to science, engineering, and planetary development. Dr. Sterling's research had concluded that the facilities were created and maintained by non-human intelligences that used Earth as a base for research and development projects requiring long-term observation of planetary conditions and biological evolution. The installations served as coordination centers for activities that spanned multiple worlds and civilizations. The hieroglyphic interface systems were designed to allow primitive species like humans to operate advanced technologies without understanding their fundamental principles. The symbolic communication allowed controlled access to capabilities that were too advanced for human science to duplicate independently. Dr. Reeves realized that accepting assignment to Dr. Sterling's research program meant participating in humanity's first sustained contact with non-human intelligence. The work involved learning to operate technologies created by minds that approached science and engineering from perspectives completely different from human thinking. The research wasn't just about understanding advanced technology. It was about preparing human consciousness for eventual direct communication with intelligences that had been observing and occasionally guiding human development for thousands of years. Dr. Sterling explained that the non-human builders weren't hostile, but they weren't necessarily benevolent either. They appeared to be conducting long-term experiments that required maintaining specific conditions on Earth, and human civilization was apparently one of the variables being studied and occasionally adjusted. The facility network served as an interface between human development and the larger experimental framework maintained by the non-human intelligences. The research programs were humanity's attempt to understand their role in experiments they hadn't known they were participating in. But the most urgent aspect of the research was determining whether humanity was approaching a point where direct contact with the experimental designers would become necessary or inevitable. The non-human intelligences appeared to be evaluating human technological and social development to determine whether humans were ready for conscious participation in the larger experimental framework. The underground facilities were testing grounds where human researchers could demonstrate their ability to work with advanced technologies responsibly, to maintain necessary secrecy, and to contribute meaningfully to projects that transcended individual planetary concerns. Dr. Reeves understood that his choice wasn't just about joining a research program. It was about helping to determine humanity's readiness for contact with intelligences that possessed capabilities beyond human imagination and operated according to agendas that spanned geological timescales. The work required abandoning conventional assumptions about human independence and accepting that human civilization was part of a larger experimental framework that extended far beyond Earth's boundaries and involved purposes that remained largely mysterious despite decades of careful study. But as Dr. Sterling prepared to reveal the full scope of what the research program had discovered about humanity's relationship with the facility builders, Dr. Reeves began to understand that even these revelations were only preliminary steps toward understanding truths that would challenge every assumption about human existence and Earth's place in the universe. Dr. Sterling led Dr. Reeves to the deepest section of the facility, through passages that seemed to pulse with a warmth that penetrated through his clothes and settled into his bones. The walls here weren't carved stone. They were composed of materials that appeared solid but yielded slightly under his fingertips, warm and almost alive to the touch, pulsing with energy patterns that created shifting visual effects that made his eyes water when he tried to focus on them. The central chamber at the facility's core contained what Dr. Sterling called the communication interface, a spherical room where the walls, floor, and ceiling merged seamlessly into a continuous surface that felt smooth as glass but warm as human skin. Hieroglyphic patterns flowed across every surface like living text, the symbols generating a subtle humming vibration that he could feel in his chest cavity, responding to the presence of human observers by displaying information that seemed to burrow directly into his thoughts. Nathan watched in amazement as the hieroglyphic patterns shifted beneath his palm, the surface warming under his touch as technical diagrams appeared that addressed his specific concerns about the facility's construction methods. The interface somehow detected his mental focus through contact, the stone growing warmer as it provided explanations that translated concepts beyond human scientific knowledge into terms he could comprehend, each new understanding accompanied by a tingling sensation that traveled up his arm. But what Dr. Sterling revealed in this chamber would shatter every assumption Nathan had formed about the facility, its builders, and humanity's relationship to the larger universe. The walls suddenly became transparent, revealing vast underground spaces stretching beyond the reach of their lights, and the air filled with a metallic taste that made his tongue feel numb as she spoke words that changed everything. The non-human intelligences that constructed these installations weren't visitors from other worlds, Nathan. They were Earth's original inhabitants. The interface responded to her words by displaying historical records that flickered across the surfaces like fire, the heat from the walls intensifying until sweat beaded on Nathan's forehead. Humans are the alien species that was introduced to this planet as part of long-term experimental research. The hieroglyphic interface displayed historical records that Nathan could somehow taste as well as see, each image carrying flavors of copper and ozone that flooded his mouth as he absorbed information about Earth's development over millions of years. The detailed documentation of multiple intelligent species that had evolved, flourished, and eventually transcended physical existence felt like electric current flowing through his nervous system. Nathan's hands trembled against the warm stone as he realized humanity wasn't Earth's first intelligent civilization. It was the latest in a series of experimental populations, and the knowledge felt like ice water in his veins despite the increasing heat radiating from the interface walls. Dr. Sterling's words seemed to echo from inside his skull as much as from her mouth. Earth serves as a laboratory where advanced consciousness studies the development of intelligence under carefully controlled conditions. The underground facilities are monitoring and guidance systems, and the original inhabitants achieved technological capabilities that allowed them to exist beyond physical limitations. The most disturbing revelation came with physical sensations that made Nathan's skin crawl. Humanity was approaching the end of its experimental period. The advanced consciousness was preparing to conclude the current phase of human development, and the air in the chamber grew thick and difficult to breathe as the implications sank in. The hieroglyphic interface displayed evaluation criteria through direct neural contact that felt like needles of light piercing his brain. The criteria included technological capability, social organization, environmental stewardship, and most importantly, the ability to discover and accept their true relationship to the planet's original inhabitants without destructive panic or violent resistance. Nathan's archaeological expedition hadn't been a random discovery. The realization hit him with physical force that made his knees buckle. The facility had been made accessible to his team specifically because the monitoring systems had identified him and his colleagues as potentially suitable candidates for conscious integration into the post-physical research community. The choice Dr. Sterling was offering wasn't just about joining a research program. The walls around them began to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat as she explained it was about participating in humanity's graduation examination. The humans who demonstrated appropriate understanding would be offered the opportunity to transcend physical limitations, while those who couldn't accept their experimental status would be eliminated when the current experimental phase concluded. Nathan understood that every choice he made was being evaluated through the interface, which had established subtle neural connections that he could feel as warm tendrils of sensation flowing through his thoughts. His responses to the technological discoveries, his reaction to government intervention, and his acceptance of non-human intelligence involvement were all components of an assessment that carried the weight of billions of lives. The hieroglyphic interface displayed real-time monitoring data that he could feel as much as see, each data point accompanied by corresponding physical sensations that made him aware of thousands of humans simultaneously undergoing similar evaluation experiences around the world. The results tingled through his nervous system like electricity, carrying the terrible knowledge that they would determine whether humanity had achieved sufficient development to warrant preservation. Nathan found himself facing a choice that would determine not just his individual future, but his species' survival. The chamber walls grew uncomfortably warm as he processed the options. He could accept the truth about human existence and embrace his role as an experimental subject, working toward conscious evolution beyond physical limitations, or reject the experimental framework and risk classification as a developmental failure. But the choice was complicated by Dr. Sterling's revelation that successful human integration would require abandoning individual human identity. The air grew thin and metallic tasting as she explained that transcendence meant losing personal existence as humans understood it, becoming components of a collective intelligence that operated according to principles beyond human comprehension. The hieroglyphic interface displayed examples of previous species that had undergone successful integration, and Nathan could feel their memories flooding through his mind like cold water. How individual consciousness could be preserved while becoming part of a larger collective intelligence that possessed capabilities no individual mind could achieve. The process wasn't death, but the sensation felt like drowning in someone else's thoughts. Nathan made his choice knowing that the weight of human survival pressed against his chest like a physical burden. He accepted integration into the advanced consciousness community, and the chamber walls immediately began to pulse with increasing heat as the interface established direct neural connections that felt like warm honey flowing through his brain. The integration process began with overwhelming sensations. Suddenly having access to knowledge, memories, and perspectives from thousands of other consciousness felt like being struck by lightning while drowning in an ocean of alien thoughts. His individual identity began to dissolve like sugar in water, but he maintained focus on his purpose through sheer force of will that felt like swimming against a riptide of collective consciousness. From his new perspective, Nathan could perceive the full scope of research programs that used Earth as a laboratory, the knowledge flowing through him like molten metal through his veins. The sensation of accessing millions of years of consciousness research felt simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying, like flying while being electrocuted. The final determination reached through consensus felt like the resolution of a massive electrical storm that had been building inside his skull. Humanity would be offered conditional preservation, with continued existence dependent on achieving specific developmental milestones, and Nathan could taste the relief in the air like sweet water after a drought. Nathan emerged from the integration experience with his individual consciousness intact but permanently changed. The lingering sensation of shared thoughts, still tingling at the edges of his awareness like phantom limbs. His role would be serving as a liaison between human civilization and the advanced consciousness, the responsibility settling on his shoulders like a weight he could physically feel pressing down on his spine.